All right. Well, now my thing's a little large. Okay. Hello. How are you? We are live, and so I am. I'm going to go through some things with you. Oh, it keeps pinging. Yeah. Good. Okay. That is Warthog Defense. That is messaging me. I'm going to be doing a video about them, about what happened to them. Um, And I'm going to take this off here so I can see their video or the messages here that are going to come through. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to be doing a video about Warthog and what they have experienced as they were taken down by YouTube just a little bit ago, just a few days back, and this was a little. Um, Scary in the sense that if they can just take them down for what looks like a Russian troll or some kind of dedicated attack or determination to get him off the channel. So I've been messaging behind the scenes, trying to find out like, hey, what's the story? How can I help? And we decided that he would provide me, and he's already done this, provided me with a message about what exactly he's experienced, and um, in doing that, we got. Let me move this forward a little bit just to for better look. In doing that, what we've gotten is his clear message. He doesn't want to be. He's kind of like Perun. Perun doesn't like the idea of showing his face and that sort of thing. And but he's provided me the message, and you can go and look at this on his Facebook afterwards. He's already agreed to do that. So um, yeah, so that's where we are. Okay, so it's been an odd week, and I'm sure you have some questions, and I'd like to address them. And I'm going to try to do something a little bit differently this week. I'm going to try to address your questions um, as as clearly as I can from like the bottom of your questions, rather than try to continually chase it. Which means you're probably going to have to put your questions in more than one time if there's something. But I will try to make sure that I'm answering your questions. Um, I do want to preface with this has been a very strange week, and there has been a lot of particularly acrimonious political nonsense. And I was wondering the degree to which you might think, and maybe you don't think this, I don't know, but the degree to which you might think that it's been inflamed by trolls. And what I mean by that is that it's I- Russian trolls tend to say standard talking points. I wonder the degree to which trolls might be invading in our political discourse, our political discussions, and getting involved and saying, either pro MAGA or pro really like anti MAGA things in our threads. It may be nothing, but it's just something that's I was thinking, and then somebody mentioned it, and I thought, wow, an interesting thought. I wonder what is happening with that. So, tell me what you think, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have uh, at all. Okay, so I'm looking through this. Hi from the Netherlands. Hi from other places. Good morning from British Columbia. Russus trolls are fun. One huge troll is Ramaswamy. That is correct. That is exactly what Ramaswamy is doing. I don't think he's trying to become president. I think he's trying to cozy up to Trump in order to be part of the cabinet, maybe vice president, something along those lines. Greetings from Belgium. Jason Murphy says, should be interesting. Warthog defense. Yeah. So if you weren't hearing me earlier, I was just messaging as I started with Warthog defense. I'm going to do a video explaining what happened there with his message. He doesn't want to be like, I offered to do it on Zoom. And it's not that kind of guy, right? Doesn't want to be show his face. So, and then you can go to Warthog Defense and see his video posted on his Facebook to prove that that's him, not like I'm me making crap up. Okay, I think that this is the big cat. I think there are foreign trolls all over YouTube, but it's getting harder to tell them apart from MAGA. Well, so I think that MAGA sounds like MAGA, and some discordant notes that I heard sounded like uh, just a little off. I don't know how to like it, like an impersonator. It's just so I don't know if that's the case or not. Okay, tell me your questions. I'm going to try to take it from the bottom so I'm not continually chasing the feed. That might mean that you need to repost, but I don't put restrictions like that you can't repost. Although you should all follow Professor Gerdes there. Well, I hope so. By the way, when you come to this channel, you're coming to this channel, I hope, because you actually do want to hear my perspective on stuff. And if you want to hear my perspective on stuff, so you might come because you want to hear news generally, or you might come because you want to hear an echo chamber, but I don't think that's it. But if you want to hear my perspective might be different from somebody else's perspective, and that's okay. I'm seeing the world through a filter, and I'm trying to make sense of it, and we're trying to do that together. But you know, you've got to stop with looking like a Republican. Well, I am a Republican. It's a bad time to be a Republican because my party's been hijacked. Um, Okay, we should already know trolls are constant in social media platforms. They are, but they generally, in my experience, haven't been. So now this is in my experience because my experience is talking about Ukraine. So maybe they have been out there doing all the MAGA stuff and I didn't know it. I mean, that's a possibility. Um, Okay, did you get a chance to read the Estonian paper on a route to the end of the war with Russia's defeat? I did not read that. Maybe I need to. Can you put the link in the chat if you can identify that here? Um, okay, setting. I'm here ironically. I don't understand, Jason Murphy. Can you tell me what that means? Does that mean that you're a MAGA type? Is that it? What the ironically is? I'm not sure I'm understanding. I'm a Republican. I just happen to be a conservative Reagan Republican that it predates and still thinks like Republicans did before Trump isolationist populists kind of overwhelmed the party. So, okay. Setting transatlantic defense up for successors, a military strategy for Ukraine's victory. Okay, I'll keep an eye out for that. Okay, let's see. We make a difference between Republicans and the MAGA death. Okay, so here's one of the things that I'd like you to think about. I don't think that calling what you said MAGA death. That's a clever pun on Megadeth, or Trump, and using that and changing that into a pejorative name for someone is helpful in any way. Just like calling liberals libtards, which I hear people in my party do to the left. I don't think that helps at all. I mean, just you. The best thing for Trump would be to be ignored. Like he'd have a hard time with that. Calling people that support him names, just like calling people that support Biden names. Like Hillary's biggest mistake in the 2016 election was the basket of deplorables line. I think that did more to energize people who were potentially pro-Trump than anything else that has happened in that entire time. So calling those names, I don't know is going to get us. It might be if you're doing it for a stress relief for you, that's one thing. But I don't. I think you're just energizing the other side in doing that. Okay, Russians producing more tanks. Do you think that they make them more drone resistant now? Sorry for my bad English. No, I don't think so. I think they're just cranking them out, and they're going to be as injured by drones as ever. I just put the title in the chat. Google it. Easy to find. It's brilliant. Thank you for doing that with a setting transatlantic defense up for success, military strategy for Ukraine's victory and Russia's defeat. Keep an eye on your channel because you represent thinking Republicans. Yeah, there's a number of places. You can watch the Bulwark, and the Bulwark will show these. They're more never Trumpers, but these are Trump. These are pre-Trump Republicans, and the way that they still think about things. So the Bulwark channel is, if you want to hear other people that are like me. I was never a never Trumper. That was not where I was. I was like, Trump. Well, it's not Hillary, and that's how I process things. But over time, you're going, maybe this we ought to do some thinking about this. And then with his stance on Ukraine, it's completely unpalatable, and I just can't understand how Republicans have shifted away from the hawk position to Russia. They're okay. Like what? Where did that happen? Okay, again, if you're putting comments, I'm going with the more recent comments, so you might have to repeat the comment. So cut and paste your comment, like cut it and paste it and hold it until I've gotten to it, and you might have to go back to it. Okay, do you think America is slow timing support not to tempt China to step up with military aid for Russia? That's an interesting question, but no, I don't think that. I think that we've been um, deterred by Putin. Like Biden, the big story of this war when it's done is that we were too slow. Now I say that on Thanksgiving, most people watch football after eating. I was watching nerdy documentaries about Serbia, and this multi-part documentary about the war in the former Yugoslavia as they broke up, and the story there was that Europe was too slow to intervene, and then NATO intervened, and by the time they did, just a terrible mess. And I think that's going to be the story of Ukraine when we look back. Okay. Hi from New Zealand. Reference the southern border. I thought Trump built a wall along the border. What happened to that? The wall was going up when Biden came into office. Now, this is not a political point, okay? So don't just say, hey, he's a Republican. I am a Republican. But when Biden came into office, the wall that was being constructed abruptly stopped. There's lots of material just sitting on the side, being sitting there in big piles, but it stopped. And that's part of the problem. Now, that's part of the problem from a Republican perspective. If you're a Democrat, you might have been happy about the wall stopping, or you might have been somebody who was wanting to see it continue, but it stopped. And so there is a real distinction between the way Republicans see this and the way Democrats in general see this. You can't talk about any group monolithically, just like you can't talk about Republicans. So, by the way, when you say Republicans bad, Republicans bad, Republicans bad, I'm a Republican, right? I mean, like, so I, I hate that I have to kind of discount people and their comments because they can't seem to get beyond the politics into the actual issue. But please don't do that. Please let's have a more mature conversation here. And by the way, don't do that to Democrats either. Like, so if you're a conservative, and this happens here sometimes too, if you're on the conservative Republican side, stop saying stuff like, well, the Democrats, they just they all don't get it. No, there's a bunch of them that actually do. I'm surprised, and I probably shouldn't be, by the number of those that are here that are saying, I don't like them doing it either. And so that's a good thing. That's a healthy place to be. Okay, the best way to respect each other's people's opinions, you should challenge untruths. That's right. Challenge the untruths, but you know what? We have to challenge it within our own side as much, right? Like if I believe something, I got this idea from Jordan Peterson. I think he's right. If you think something's true, like you're standing on a post, and you should try to do your best, if you think that thing's true, to kick the crap out of that post to see if it'll move. And if it doesn't budge, maybe you're on something solid. And if it does move, then you knew it was not true. So that's and then if that's true, then you can go on to the next one and do the same thing. Okay. Let's see, bunch of us are from Europe. I bet not too many care what anyone votes as long as it helps Ukraine and NATO alliance. But you do care because until it does help Ukraine. Yeah, right. So that's precisely the problem. There's a fraction of the Republican Party, and I know that the two-party system's a weird thing to you in Europe, but the two-party system makes sense in a winner-take-all scenario. Right? If you have 50% plus one to get elected, then two parties means that you have a maximum chance of getting there. So yeah, so and I understand it. I'm not trying to get into I really was not trying to get as deep into it as I had to this week. politically. I try to steer away from it. I don't get into any other political points about things like, here's what I think about tax credits or or whatever else. But because the border is tied to Ukraine, we had to talk about what was going on with both of those issues and why Republicans are this way and why Democrats are that way. Okay. Polls say two-thirds of Americans support Ukraine and are frustrated that aid is so sluggish. So whatever is in office, best support Ukraine in a meaningful way. So a large amount of Democrats, a slightly smaller but still good fraction of independents are that way, and about half are Republicans, ish, something in that neighborhood. But the loud Republicans are are the ones. So you keep seeing the same names come up again, like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Trump or Gates or like these are the players, and it's almost like social media where it because it's all about you, it just kind of warps things. So like Marjorie Taylor Greene has every incentive to be obnoxious and then be back in the papers again as the being quoted again, and so it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Let's see. Muhhy, Muhhy. I'm surprised the Republicans kept Trump and MAGAs in the Republican Party after Capitol Hill incident. Is there a discussion about separating from them within the Republicans? No, because if you do that, then so you have to recapture the party and capture the ideas, and like you have to work from within to make sure that people come back aboard this train. Like I don't believe that this is going to be a permanent shift in ideology. This is a shift to a person, not to a principled position. So while Trump united people that were maybe politically apathetic who were isolationists, I believe that they will shift over in some time. I don't know. This is just my thinking. So but when Trump is no longer there, no longer possible because he's old or ineligible or past his term or whatever, I think you'll see a different view within the party more than likely. Um, yeah, I mean, I was hoping Pence would have some traction. He's left already. Nikki Haley could have some traction. She seems to be the primary alternative. DeSantis hasn't gotten it, but he was kind of wishy-washy. So okay, the big cat. I'm finding smart people. By the way, I've told people in the thread here what I'm trying to do is read the most recent rather than chasing things because I get perpetually behind. So copy and paste your thing, and you might have to say it a couple of times. If I'm not trying to not answer questions, I'm just trying to not get so behind again. The Big Cat says, I'm finding smart people who claim to be MAGA Americans, have detailed and convincing American backgrounds, but love Putin, hate Zelensky, and are pro-Trump. Is anyone else seeing this? Yeah, I see that. There is the Russian propaganda machine, starting with RT and state media, which spills into repeaters in the United States like Redacted and Doug McGregor and Tucker Carlson and that kind of crowd has been very convincing to a lot of people about where and what these guys are what reality is. I think they're completely in left field, maybe right field, I guess. They're completely wrong. They're all outside the ballpark, maybe. Um, but I mean, these are people that you would otherwise think they're fine people, but they've bought these lies, and I'm doing my best to push back against it. I can't see. Tell me if you see whatever the underpinnings are, or what are the substructures that are causing this to stick. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm doing my best to undermine it. The best that I can do with Russian media, as far as I can tell, is say, here, see how they lie here, see how they lie here, see how they lie here. Now, is this true? Do you think that this is true if they lied here and here and here and here and here and here? So that's my approach. Okay. Um, so Cheryl, hello Cheryl, says my cousin who says he's a Reagan Republican is now MAGA Republican. He adores Tucker. Okay, so that's one of the dividing lines, right? If you adore Tucker Carlson, there. So and I actually like some of Tucker's positions on some other things, but he went way off the rails here on this. Like if he's talking about uh, school choice or something. Yeah, I'm there with him. But when it came to foreign policy in Ukraine, like he went very strange. Now he has an interesting background where his dad apparently had some connections to Orban's Hungary, and there was something really weird there. Johnny Pierce was unpacking some of that, and even wrote a large article. But Johnny kind of in his article seems to show that it's a money relation. I don't think it is. I think they're convinced that this is what conservatism is. That's not conservatism. That's an authoritarian something. I don't know what that is, and it looks somewhat conservative, but it's you can be authoritarian and progressive and authoritarian or conservative, and but that's doesn't it's authoritarian. I mean, there's really that's what's under. If you look what's underpinning Hungary's government, it's very different than what I stand for. Okay, um, okay. Cheryl, I have no idea debating Americans or Russians online. It was so frustrating. Okay, which part of Tucker's fascist propaganda do I like? So uh, I think that's a bit of a loaded question. Tucker has upheld some conservative kind of positions, right? So let's take something that's fairly benign, school choice. Yeah, I'm all for school choice rather than forcing people to go to the school based on where they are in their zoned in their on their map in within their city. Let them have some choice of go to this school or that school. Then you have some competition, and so that's the way I fundamentally would think as a conservative. Okay. But his foreign policy went off the rails, and that's really the interesting thing. We should never have politicized foreign policy. I think this is a mistake. My brother mentioned this. My brother's a he talked about this during COVID. One of the big mistakes that we made was politicizing during COVID. The politicians of both parties should have been early on. Now, when Trump was, it's a fascinating thing. When Trump was a president, and talking about creating this quickly working through this COVID drug, conservatives were, yeah, okay, this is all right. And Democrats were the ones who were going, well, I'll never take that drug. And then when Biden came into office, Democrats were quickly on the, if you're not taking the second shot, you're a threat. And conservatives were like, we'll never take that. Like, what is wrong with you people? Who's the president? And I think there's some spillover effect here into Ukraine, where who the president is actually informs how you view the war in Ukraine. I think that's actually what's happening. Not with everyone, but I think there's some level of effect on that, and that's a terrible way to run your foreign policy. Our foreign policy should be kind of broadly agreed on, and we shouldn't make that a fighting point between us within parties. Okay. Indian Adele 1. As a new U.S. citizen, I naturalized this week, the son of a son in the U.S. Army. I see. Congratulations. Welcome. Thank you for coming here. I see giving aid to Ukraine is being completely in U.S. national interest. It also happens to be on the right side of history. I think you're right on both counts. And now there are some conflicts where I'd say maybe we shouldn't be involved because these guys have been fighting for a long time. This isn't something that we should be involved in. It's not in our national interest. There's multiple reasons, but this is a democracy being overrun by an autocrat in the veneer of a democracy, with the potential to kick off World War III if it's not handled appropriately. It's a big one. It's one that we need to address. Okay. Let's see. Robert, most schools have a strong parents association. And association is active about issues. Okay. But that's not the point behind school choice. School choice is allowing people to have the freedom to do that. At any rate, I'm not here to talk about school choice. I'm just saying it's another issue like that a conservative would feel as opposed to what liberals tend toward. And these are broad generalizations. There are some very graphic videos out there. The reality of this war, the media doesn't show them because of the graphic nature. Do you think releasing these would actually help those who don't see? Yes and no. I don't think I don't think it's going to change minds so much as reinforce what's already there. I think you and I will look at it and say, Wow, this is a terrible, tragic kind of thing. I mean, I've seen some things that I don't want to have in my memory. And then people on the other side will say, well, that's just more reason that you should stop the killing right now, even if that's giving away your land. Like, I just can't understand the argument here. Okay, next on conservatism, this is Michael Bjork. At its core is the belief that everything is at its core, it is a belief. You're making a statement, not a question. It is a belief that everything is a-okay and nothing needs to change. No, that's not exact. That's not what conservatism defines itself as. It's trying to uphold the best of our tradition of what we've inherited. Yet MAGA wish to go back to a previous political stage, meaning they are not conservatives. Okay, the Trumpian Republicans that are, this is MAGA's a shorthand for it, are saying something different than what conservatives have traditionally said. Now, it's not the slogan "Make America Great Again." And there's nothing. I mean, I think the slogan's actually fine. There's nothing wrong with the slogan itself. Now, some people will disagree, um, but how they define things, how they explain things, how they see things, the vitriol with which they want to fight about things, as opposed to, like, think about Romney, think about McCain. Even though McCain was pretty much like he was up for the brawl, he was also trying to be a gentleman along the way. And so I think MAGA as a movement is, I don't want to say cult of, um, but there is something cult-like in the way that people embrace the Trumpian kind of thing. Like, it's more about Trump than it is about the ideas. Like, if Trump switched his idea, and this is one of the weird things that gives me hope. If Trump tomorrow, okay, somebody just popped up with a super chat, and I'm going to answer the question of this in just a second. If Trump tomorrow switched his idea to supporting Ukraine, those people would go along with him. A lot of those people would go along with him. And that's the weird thing, because it's more about him than it is the principles. My principles didn't change. And as Trump was championing many of them early on, and he was certainly a better alternative than Hillary from where my principles were. And I know some of you are going to be like, how can you say that? Listen, I mean, Hillary was not like something that was palatable to the right. And I don't think Trump would have won if it wasn't Hillary. I mean, if you had a different candidate other than Hillary, Trump wouldn't have been able to win. Um, but I think if he changed, I think a lot of people would go along with him. Okay, so William G. Atheist says, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. I spent a ton of time on this. The elephant in the room. What are the odds of Trump winning in your general? Okay, so I'm telling you what I'm telling you from triangulating on many Republicans who have been paying a lot of attention to this. There's a very high probability that Trump will win the primary. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm putting my money on Nikki Haley. I mean, that's where I'm planning to go at this point. I wanted Tim Scott. Tim Scott is philosophically as conservative as anyone else, but his demeanor is much more conciliatory. Now, I mean, he has principles and he stands by his principles, but he's also not likely to call you a jerk. Right? I mean, like, let's sit down and discuss this and rationally kind of hash this out. Nikki Haley is a little bit more, she might ruffle your feathers a little bit more, but she's fully supporting Ukraine as well. And she was the former governor of South Carolina, and she was the ambassador to the United Nations. So the governor plus ambassador to the UN gives her the foreign policy prep, and that's actually a pretty good package. Whether people will embrace that or not is an open question. I don't know that you tell me in the comments. I don't know the women on the left will embrace her as the first female president because she doesn't uphold leftist kind of female perspectives, even though she's female, and that would be a coup. But okay. But I don't know that she's going to get the traction. We'll find out in about a month or two when we start to see the first few primaries and see how that goes. I think Trump has a high probability, to answer your question about whether high probability that he can get through the primary. I think the fast the larger perspective is that he's probably not going to win the general if he goes up against Biden head to head, although it is possible. So I would say possible, maybe not probable, maybe, but they didn't think he was going to win in 2016, and he's just had this ability to politically levitate. I mean, he would do things that other, it's over. It's over. I mean, how many times did I hear it's over? It's almost like what I heard about it being over for Trump in the run up to the 2016. It's like hearing Doug McGregor saying Ukraine's going to lose next week. I mean, it happened every other day. You'd hear those kind of headlines. So I don't know. I don't think so. I'm in a weird position. I don't want Biden's other policies. I want him to support Ukraine, but I don't want Trump. So I'm really hoping that Haley gets some traction. We'll see how that all plays out. Okay, I hope I answered your question satisfactorily. Okay, actual case, as you seem confident. By the way, I'm doing this differently. I'm going to the last question that's, one of the last questions that are raised. And I preface this in the very beginning. There's two things I want you to know. So I'm trying to just read your comments. So if you're repetitive, that's fine if I haven't done your comment. Also, when I started this, I was just chatting with Warthog Defense, messaging with them. And you know that they have been taken off of YouTube. And I asked, hey, do you want to come on? Let's Zoom. Let's talk about it. Warthog does not want to show face. Like I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me. So I said, okay, how about you just put into a message, like put into like writing, and I'll read the writing. I'll show the audience, and then they're going to actually put it on their Facebook. Warthogs to prove that I'm not just crazy making stuff up. So I'll be doing that. I think today, maybe tomorrow. So be looking for that, because they were taking off of YouTube for impersonation, which I think was trolls taking them down. That's our estimation here. Okay. Let's see. In 2016, Trump was pushed by the memes. Now the memes, luckily, pretty much ridicule him. It depends on where you are. I mean, if you're on one platform, you might see that. If you're on Truth Social, he's huge. Like, I mean, he's got a pretty significant following. So you can't. So again, this is the same thing as what I keep pushing about triangulating. You got to pay attention to what's going on all sides. It's not just one thing or another. Okay, Peter the Ritter says, is it true Michael Bennett want the whole Congress to stay until in this crisis until all problems have been solved? Well, okay, so here's what's happened in Congress. The House has gone home, and people say, people talk about it like they go home and they're just on vacation. They're going home, scheduling events to talk to their constituents, to hear what they have to say. And so that's a healthy thing. That's what you want them to be doing. It's not like they just don't care and they gave up. And if you have that perspective, get that out of your head. When they go home on recess, they're listening to their constituents. It's not going to Hawaii, right? Well, unless you're from Hawaii. So that's an important thing that that they really need to be able to do. Okay, at any rate, okay, that being said, House went home, Senate's working, Senate's trying to work out a bill. I think the Senate is going to hash out something that will be acceptable enough to the House so that when they come back, they'll be able to vote on something, whether they come back before New Year's or after New Year's. I'm not really worried about it, because they're going to get what they're going to work out a deal. I'm pretty sure about it. But I know the process enough that I'm not flipping out. And I don't think flipping out is going to help anything. So even if they weren't getting it, I wouldn't be flipping out about this. I'd be thinking about, okay, what's plan B? How can EU do this? How can we get South Korea to step up over here? Whatever it is. Maybe that's demeanor. I don't know. But I do. I mean, if I was a gambling man, I'm really not. But if I could put down look, if I have $100 right here, right? If I was a gambling man and I said, okay, here's my $100, I'm saying it's going to happen. I wouldn't say when. I wouldn't say it's going to happen to Christmas. I wouldn't say it's going to happen in January. It'll happen. It'll happen January, February, whatever it is, it will happen. I would be willing to bet immediately that that's correct. Now, I could be wrong, but that's my read of it. So if you're a Republican, do you really want to be the party that saw Vladimir Putin overrun Ukraine and then kick off World War III with NATO involvement potentially because they went on, right? I mean, do you really want to be that guy, regardless of what you experience elsewhere in. Okay, so I don't think, but they do have real priorities that they haven't been heard because Biden has not worked with them on the border. They've stopped the border wall and then haven't worked with them from their perspective. That's how they see things. Okay, so I'm just telling you. So people are like, "No, you're wrong. I'm not wrong about their perspective, as wrong as they may be about their perspective. They may be right, they may be wrong, but that's their perspective. People are like, well, Republicans don't feel this. I'm telling you, I mix with them all the time. This is my tribe, and I can't understand. And my tribe has told me I'm wrong. I don't understand Ukraine. Are you freaking kidding me? Like I spent I spent hours a day on this since the very beginning. Are you kidding me that I don't understand what's going on because Tucker Carlson said X, right? So you got to get beyond that kind of thing on either side. Okay. Okay. Where did I leave off? Dennis Jensen just popped up. I will lose my mind if we end up with Donald ends up running with Vivek as vice president. Yeah, okay. So the only plus of that would be he'd be ineligible after that and would then have to go away. I almost don't know if it's a. I'm going to phrase that all wrong. I almost think it would be a bad thing, almost thing, if he loses and then can come back and run again, like another 4 years of waiting on him. But like I said, it's a weird thing that, like, it's more the. I don't want to say cult of personality because that, but there is something very much like that where people latch on to Trump. Like, look, if you followed Reagan, like he was genial, he was nice personality, but he embodied the core values. Trump kind of slipped into it and kind of shifted the values, and it's a weird thing to watch. Um, I, so some of them are still there, and it's like a Venn diagram. Like there is even I have some overlap with Trump with his policies. His personality, no, well, with some of the policies, but on Ukraine, definitely not. And so it's a very weird thing to watch. It's kind of hard to get your sea legs with what is going on. Okay, cat the big cat. I'm not just picking on like the big cat I said a couple times, but that's because where it falls. So if you're not getting your question answered, just keep putting it into the chat, and I'll keep coming to the end. It's better than me trying to chase down the list, and that's been very frustrating. I don't even. By the way, you probably watch more live streams than I do. I don't. I mean, I came to this. I watch a few here and there, but is there a better way that I should be doing this? If so, tell me how. I mean, just this is a weird mechanism. Okay. Dub Big Cat says, I still don't even know what specific policies about border security the GOP and Democrats are arguing about. Okay, so look up HR2. Actually, I have it up here because I was going to do an entire video about it. I'm not going to get into it right now, but HR2 just lines out. If you look up the legislation in a summary, it'll give you like 5 bullet points of we want this, we want that, we want the other thing. That's what Mike Johnson said he wants as a trade. If he gets that, we deal. And then Brett Baer, the interviewer, this was on Fox News the other night, said, okay, well, what if you don't get all that? Well, I mean, we'll negotiate, but it's in their court. So HR2, look that up. And it's things like continue building the fence. It's things like stop catch and release, or so the system now is allowing anybody to come across, say, I need immunity. Well, you need to have a process to determine whether they really do have a legitimate fear or legitimate concern of just coming in. Now, I'm a free marketeer. I'm the old school kind of conservative who thinks, like Reagan was talking about, when, well, they're coming here. That's a great thing, right? We want them to come in. So fix the border. This would be my policy. Fix the border and then put a door in it and open as many people as you want to let in. Like they want to come here. Like this is America, like Statue of Liberty, all that kind of stuff. Like, but you want to make sure that bad elements are not coming through, um, running drugs, like that kind of thing, or running who knows what. I mean, people coming from all kinds of places. So, okay. Cheryl said, in most live streams, putting at in front of your name highlights the question or statement for you. Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you could do that, then I know that I'm looking at, you're talking to me, not someone else. So thank you, Cheryl. Okay. William G again says, I'm Canadian here and I want border security from American guns. Hey, that might actually be a legitimate concern. I've said this before. Like, the Canadian border is pretty porous as well. Like, shouldn't there be something? So my guess is if you fix the Mexican border, people will flow in from Canada differently. I mean, but it's a little harder, I think, to get to Canada to start with, to then come in. And then to go through Mexico. But nonetheless, I mean, okay. At any rate, the whole point of this is you want to control that and then open it up to whoever you want to let in. That's great. I mean, I'm fine with that. You go back 4 generations. That's my Irish side. Potato famine. That's my maternal side, right? Go back 3 generations. My grandfather escaped before Hitler. Okay, so now it wasn't cool being German during World War II. Like they gave away their shortwave radio, so nobody was thinking that they're, up to something nefarious. But yeah, this is a nation of immigrants. That's the way the world works. That's the way the United States works. I mean, we come from all over. Haji says, are there steps in place to expel non-conforming members of the EU or the UN? No. And so what happened with ORBÁN was actually really fascinating, where he stepped out. He left the room after negotiating for 8 hours and they're not listening to me. And he left the room. Now, is there a deal where he got paid off? Well, the official line from the EU is, no, this just happened to be a coincidence that we worked this out at the same time, but it's not. And that's what they said. Did it probably happen that way? I mean, am I gambling that $100 again? I would say yes, but I don't have any proof of that, but it looks kind of like that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's could be what's going on. Now, he left the room. He knew he was leaving the room. They voted. They had unanimity. When the Declaration of Independence was signed, we had a similar kind of scenario where we had the unanimous declaration and some of the delegates left the room. So that's what was going on. Okay, Cheryl said, when I lived in Northern California, I draw a lot of drugs coming in by boats after the big marijuana crackdown. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be the next phase of how you'll have to do that. And then it becomes a Coast Guard kind of issue. Sure. I mean, but this is a big issue. So they've ignored this issue. And I've seen this since the late 90s, I guess it was, that the border became a really big issue in Republican circles. If you're in Democrat circles, it really wasn't that big of an issue. But the intensity in political polling, you could see since at least 97. And Trump rode in on fixing that. So I don't agree with some of the analysis, like, well, if they do this, then Biden will have he'll be able to say, I fixed the border. I don't think, tell me in the comments. I don't think it resonates for the left like it does for the right. So if he said that and you're on the left side of the spectrum, you'd be like, okay, you fixed the border, or you shouldn't have done that. Like there is a faction that's like anti that. Small, but there's still a faction. And so I don't agree that that's why they're doing it. Like this idea that they just want to have this perpetual issue with it. I don't think that that's true at all. I think that's a misread of conservatives. But again, I'm a conservative and I'm saying they really do feel this kind of thing. And it's not just MAGA that feels that. As a conservative, I want them to fix that and then do it legally. I don't want your first act coming into the country breaking the law. Come in and then let's get you citizenship. Let's get you plugged in. Let's get you working. I don't want you underground. I want you plugged into the society and working. Okay. The snake says your tribe has voted you off the island. Well, it certainly kind of feels like that, but I want to fight for my party. So let me fight for my party. Um, Morning from California. Let's see. Pim Forne. Oh, I don't even know what that is. Pim Forne, Dutch Prime Minister. Oh, you're not speaking a different language. Prime Minister, I guess. Dutch Prime Minister got shot for saying 20 years later, and this happens. I'm not sure exactly what we're saying because I really don't know enough about Dutch prime ministers. So, but yeah, I mean, there's this thing in Europe as well going on, but it's not the same. Uh, War Watcher, you are on the wrong media. It ain't propaganda channel. Laugh out loud. I don't know why he said that. Okay. Somebody they're cross talking. Okay, so when you're watching these UA tubers, as I call them, we have different perspectives, and that's okay. Watch different people and get different perspectives. Don't just watch me. I mean, I think I am doing a healthy job, but I admit my biases freely. I tell you I'm a Republican as much as I do, so that you know that I'm admitting my biases right up front. Like, and I would say that anybody who is credible should be telling you, I'm not unbiased. This is my view. And if they're doing that, then that's a safer place to be than if they're, no, I'm unbiased and I see everything. Now, I'm not claiming that anybody is necessarily doing that, but I personally tell you this right up front for a reason. Okay. Let's see. John, just not good says allowing aggressive country to be member of a group promoting peace is just plain stupid, needs to change. I think we're talking about Hungary still, but there's no way out of, like, you can't. Are you going to expel Hungary? And like, I'm not sure what to do with Hungary exactly. Cheryl says the problem is employers want migrant laborers but aren't willing to go through the effort to invite them in legally. Well, we could change that. I mean, we could make that a smooth glide path to do that if we wanted to by law, but let's do things by law instead of violating the law. You violate the law only when conscience demands, like a civil rights protest or something along those lines. Otherwise, just change the law as you need to change the law. Okay, the snake, glad to see that your moratorium on using MAGA has ended. No, it's not a moratorium. I've never done that. I've tried to explain what it means clearly, what Trumpian populist isolationists are like. And it's harder to spit out Trumpian isolationist populists than it is to say MAGA, but I'm trying to make clear distinctions. And not all that support Trump are populist isolationists, but they tend that direction. So it's like no group is monolithic. Okay. That's called stereotyping, and stereotyping is bad, which is a stereotype, which is odd, isn't it? I mean, okay. At any rate, let's see, where are we? Axel K, you seem confident aid to Ukraine will pass through Congress. I am confident that it will. What indicators would you be looking for over the next few months that would make you worry about aid not passing? The big indicator is that that there's no movement on what they want within the Senate. But I see that actually happening right now. That Schumer's talking about that they're working out these deals right now. They're working in it. Remember, the Senate is much more clubby than the House. Now, you wouldn't necessarily know that from the outside, but if you pay attention long enough, the senators are there for 6 years. They get to know each other. They're more deal maker oriented. They have to have a threshold of 60 votes. They have a supermajority to do anything over there, and they did that by design. I mean, their own rules within the Senate, and so they tend to, you get this, I get that, and I'll make you this deal for that deal, right? They tend to do that more. The Senate is the one that's the holdup now, which is actually better than the House. Well, okay, so the House are. Cheryl on here has talked about how the Republicans are more like dogs and the Democrats like cats. I think the House and the Senate are like that as well. The Senate get along better than the members of the House, generally speaking. The House are more like cats. Even if it's a Republican House, they're more like cats. The Senate, the Republican demand is something along the lines of are two, if you can get some of this going. If the Senate does not move at all toward immigration, to dealing anything with immigration, that would be the sign that I would say that's something really bad. It's going to take even longer, but they're starting to work toward that. Okay, Matt just popped up and said the U.S. did pass the NDAA. I know I talked about it with the 300 million in aid in it. Yeah, that's not much, but it's something. Obviously not enough, but it's a great sign that both parties are working in good faith to negotiate. They can work together. They don't generally work together. And if you put your faith in government to do well, government only does a couple of things really well. Like they can do justice reasonably well. It's not perfect, but they can do that. They can do war, and they can do that. But they have to be united, and they're not united until they have a threat. And right now, this wing within the Republican Party is not feeling the threat because they bought the lies, and I'm not sure exactly how to unpack those lies. But they bought a lot of the Russian propaganda talking points, and that's very unfortunate. Now that they're fighting, and this is going to be the weirdest thing that you're going to hear me say today, that they're fighting and at odds is a good, healthy thing in one sense. Not in the sense that I don't want them to be doing that. I want them to be getting material and support to Ukraine. Like, please let me preface that. But when they're fighting, when they're calling each other names, when they're like, you're bad and this is the better way and you're wrong, and right, that's healthy because there's freedom. When you have to link arms, that's really dangerous. Like the scariest moment that I've ever seen politically was either on 9/11 or 9/12. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was on the Capitol steps. I have to go back and look at this and see when it was. But you can find it on YouTube. The congressmen were making a joint statement, and then they spontaneously broke into singing "God Bless America." They were like linked arms, singing "God Bless America," right? These were people that a week earlier didn't like each other and were saying, "You're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong," right? That's a dangerous place to be. It looks like it's oh, well, can't they all just we're not going to get along. In a healthy, normal scenario, we just don't see things the same way. Okay. Next question. Do you think that the USA can or should give Ukraine 42 billion PA to match Russia until Russia goes home? So I think that we should be supporting them with whatever they need, especially war-related materials rather than humanitarian assistance, to draw down our stocks, rebuild our stocks with what we're doing, and give them those things that they need. But we give the lion's share of military aid, and we should focus on that rather than on other financial or humanitarian assistance. Look, a way around this, so people are worried about it, like, well, what if they just don't get along? Europe could step up by simply purchasing it from the US. Like they could purchase the war material from the US and do it that way. Now, I think that would be unfortunate if we went down that path, because if you're the leader, now I'm not an internationalist. Okay. People are like, well, you're thank you for being moderate. I'm not moderate. I'm conservative. So, well, you're just an internationalist. From the conservatives will say that. I'm not an internationalist. But if you're a world leader, you need to lead. And sometimes the cost of leading is costly, right? I mean, that's the reality. And if you don't lead, what fills the vacuum, right? You want China stepping into that role and being the world leader? Okay. Mushroom Manny, get off your high horse. You're talking to somebody else. Who cares? Same benefit. Okay, they're talking to somebody else. Okay, well, there are some. El Kudo says, well, there are some good companies that came out of Russia. Like, I don't know why we're talking about that. Let's go. TT says, and wondering if something happens in the Pacific, if you'll ditch us as well. The U.S. has already asked this week to send a warship to the Red Sea to help with the situation there. Okay, so that's actually a really good question. So I know that the U.S. is looking at China as a threat. Now, here's some of the background to this. So China wants to be the regional. Okay, so I did this thing on hegemony versus leadership the other day. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch that video. So China wants to be the regional, like, kind of superpower in the region. and anyone getting in their way is a problem. The U.S. is in their way because the U.S. wants to keep things flowing, keep the trade flowing, keep those, and China has different ambitions. So we're on kind of a collision course between the U.S. and China, and we hope that that doesn't happen, but we're preparing as if that is the upcoming threat. And so some Republicans who aren't MAGA, who don't want to support Ukraine as much as they do, as much as I do, think that, well, we need to keep our powder dry because China may become a problem, and if it does, we have to be prepared for that. I I get that. I don't think that, because I think if you tamp down what's going on in Ukraine, China becomes less likely, not more likely, to actually pop off. And so again, it's just your theory of human nature, your theory of like how incentives work and that kind of thing. But I understand that position, but I don't subscribe to it. Okay. Thorne says, might U.S. weapons manufacturers urge representatives to vote for Ukraine aid? Well, I think they have every incentive to, but I don't think that that's going to be the big key. Let's go up a little bit. Well, here's another one for me. Do you see China going against Islam? I've never actually thought of that. That's a great question. I don't know. I don't think that they have any real dog in that fight, unless it's trying to. So, look, China wants to grow and expand, just like Russia wants to grow and expand, except they're not making the historical claim argument. They're just wanting to expand and become a larger power. But I don't know. That is a great question. Wow. I'm not often stumped, but I haven't really thought about anything. There's nothing baked in, so I can't bring it out of the oven. Let me think about that. That's really interesting. Okay. Japan supports Ukraine because we share borders with Russia, China, and North Korea. Our problem is that our hands are tied when it comes to military support. And we tied those hands in the United States after World War II because, we didn't want Japan being the Bushido-ish kind of warrior culture that they were, that was really like, in dropping the atomic bombs was so that we wouldn't have another Normandy in Japan that was supposed to be 10 times as costly. So, yeah, there's a reason for that. I saw a meme the other day that was talking about, like, that something has gone very strange when the French, the English, and the Dutch are all encouraging Germany to remilitarize. Like, I mean, it's an interesting concept there as well. So, okay. Let's see who's next. Addy F says, does it really matter about the U.S. money? Ukraine has an agreement for lend-lease. I'm not sure. Somebody was telling me that lend-lease ran out, but I have to go back and look at that. So don't take that as a fact that Dr. Gerdes said. As far as I'm aware, UA has not received anything via lend-lease yet. Yeah, I'm not aware of that either. That's a really good question. Adrian Blom says American trade routes makes them a dominant force. This is the problem. Well, the trade routes allow international trade, and if you took the U.S. Navy, its primary thing is tamping down like people that would otherwise get antsy and want to take stuff and break things from that are other people's, right? And if you withdrew that and you created a vacuum, international trade would collapse in a very short period of time. I believe, or it would be subsumed by a Chinese dominated here and a this faction dominated there and a that faction dominated here, and that would not be a healthy place to be. Okay. Okay. What other questions do we have here? Money. The big cat said, "Oh, that's gone up." I'm going up because it looks like people are cross talking here. The money to Ukraine is some of the best defense spending ever. It's not often that you can destroy half your enemy's military capacity without even going to war. Yeah, that's right. I mean, so it's kind of foolish when we're talking about how we're spending too much money. No, you're spending money. Like my water heater broke, my hot water heater. I was getting these little flakes in my water, and I was like, oh, this is a bad sign. I had to replace the hot water heater. Didn't want to do it. It was costly. My water isn't any better. I mean, like any warmer now because of that. But I had to replace it. And sometimes you just have to pay for things that you don't want to pay for because you have to pay for it because that's the way life works. And this is where we are. But it would be far worse if like it blew up or it leaked or right. So let's deal with the mountain before it's a mountain while it's still a molehill, and spending it now is actually a great amount to spend. And by the way, when we say for our enemy, Russia wasn't really like our enemy. That's another really interesting thing to consider. Russia wasn't really, we weren't thinking of terms of Russia as the enemy until February of 2022 when they kicked off that war. Now that changed, and you can see that in polling and public sentiment and that kind of thing. It was like, no, there's an interesting thing to this as well. I overuse the word interesting, but I find a lot of things interesting. Um, uh, so I think something goes back to the Russia Trump scandal kind of things. And if you go back and look at it politically, I'm not telling you this is how it worked. I'm telling you this is how Republicans perceived it. This is how Democrats perceived it. Democrats were largely under the impression or convinced that there was collusion between Republicans and Russia. And there's this, Russia's hoping get this through, that kind of thing. I'm going to come to your super chat question here in just a moment. You'll be next to be answered, but let me finish this thought. So there is this concept on the left side of the spectrum. Well, Trump was only elected because of Russia's help or something along those lines. I think that in 2016, now correct me if I'm wrong. If you're liberal, particularly on the left side of the spectrum, I really want to hear from you. I think that helped cause the left to see Russia in a very bad way. And you see this in the polling. And then I think that also caused Republicans to see Russia as better, not because he helped Trump, but because they don't believe, like statistically, Republicans don't seem to believe at all that Russia was colluding with Trump in order to whatever, that it was, they see that as a, Democrat left wing, political attack on Trump, saying the Russians are doing that. The Russians were doing something. My perspective is that the Russians were just trying to monkey with the economy and actually thought that they were going to make it hard for Hillary when she won. And they were just as surprised as we were. And there's some evidence that that is the case. I could be wrong about that. But Republicans started softening on Russia while Democrats started hardening on Russia. And that might be part of why you see the shift of why the Democrats are really against Russia. I think there's that political thing is baked in. Okay. Tell me what you think in those comments here. Michael Barnett, thank you for the £5 super chat. Putin, some have noted, had a persistent cough, an early sign of possible cancer, but he was not open to reasonable negotiation. Are his days numbered? I'm not that kind of doctor. I can't tell. I did find it interesting that we saw a picture of him sitting around a table in reasonable proximity to other people rather than keeping them at a distance like he had since COVID. So I can't speak to his health issue. I don't know. And so I'm not equipped to do that, but thank you for asking the question. Okay. Thorne says, Professor Gerdes, might U.S. weapons manufacturers urge Republican representatives to vote for military aid to Ukraine? Somebody else asked that, and I don't, even if they do, it's not going to make that much of a dent. Captain Ron says, the big red dog is digging in our backyard. Why do these new Republicans seem okay with it? And again, I think there's a few things going on. I think there's propaganda. I think that they bought or heard through repeaters like Tucker. I think that because Biden's for it, I must be against it. I think there's that. I think there's what I just described, where because of the Russian collusion scandal, the Mueller report, and all that kind of thing, that Republicans are looking at that going, this is just a Democrat setup. They didn't, and so they see Russia as less of a threat, which they shouldn't have, because before that, in 2015, 2014, Russia was much higher on like how Republicans assessed as a threat, and then kind of came down, and that's for political reasons. It's very strange, but I think all those reasons kind of add up and move that direction. Okay. Goldfish says, how scared do you think Putin is? Like his panic attack on Victory Day parade and his general unsecure attitude this year. Man, I'd be very nervous if I was Putin. But remember, he has to project confidence. He can't not project confidence. It's especially true in an authoritarian system. I think he's hoping that time will allow him a means of getting something, of retaining something, of winning something. If he can make it through his election, once he's elected, he can mobilize more. And he's been soft mobilizing all the way through. But I see no evidence that he's going to give up, although I don't see. I'd be very nervous because he should have, from his calculation, should have won a long time ago. But he doesn't seem to have any plans to give up. And I think that that's a significant issue. He's not going anywhere. This is going to be a long war if he can make it. And he's been waging war against Ukraine on a small scale for a long time. So he's comfortable with that. But okay, the messages in state media are all geared to say, you can't win, it's all over. So they're trying to work those narratives as much as possible. But I think he knows that there's a big problem. I think he knows that much more now than he did in the early days. And I think in the early days, he wasn't getting necessarily the best feedback from his troops. Okay, Robert I'm going to slaughter that name. I'm sorry I slaughtered names all the time. This knows Nick de go. Okay. Professor Gerdes explains, why do conservatives worry about border crossers yet ignore wealthy visa overstayers are actual criminals? Yeah, we should do something about those too. I think you should be consistent. So don't paint in that broad of a brushstroke. So Cheryl said, my cousin repeats this stuff all the time. Again, it's the repeating. That's so who is it? If you know people who are repeating, who are they repeating? Tucker, Doug McGregor. Put this in the comments because I really do want to know this. Tucker, Doug McGregor, Redacted, Scott Ritter, Duran. Who else? Who else is in that list? Please put that into the comments because I'd like to hear who they're listening to. William asked, tell us again what it is I teach. Okay, so my discipline is in leadership studies, right? So leadership is a subslice of management and house and business, but it's interdisciplinary at the same time. So it's something different. I created the master's in organizational leadership at my university. I designed and built the undergraduate degree in leadership there as well. I also have a master's in public policy. So I'm a little bit different than some others, as well as my MBA, and my undergrad was government and psychology. So I'm kind of all over the map. And I'm also very conservative, and I've been politically engaged since I was very young. Okay, Carl says, Professor Gerdes, in my view, so by the way, so because of that penchant toward looking at leadership, I don't do the battle map kind of thing. I kind of look at what the leaders in key areas are doing and why they're doing it and try to make sense of that. Okay, Professor Gerdes, my view is that Trump is aligned with the way oligarchs do business and get away with a lot. This is his attraction to Russia. Same for Elon Musk. I don't know. There's something. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but something's off, and I don't know how to describe the off exactly. Michael Barnes said knows Nick Giddo. Okay. Cheryl said Tucker Carlson primarily, Duran. Yeah. And yeah, Tucker's real, man. So, and there's interesting things like with Tucker, the Heritage Foundation, which is a very conservative group, has gone off the rail with that as well. So Jake Bro showed a guy on his show the other day that was talking about like how much Ukraine aid was actually worth and that kind of thing. What he didn't say, and maybe he knows this, or maybe he just didn't think it was important. I just don't know what. But that guy used to work at Heritage until he was essentially pushed out of Heritage and now is at the Hudson Institute. The Hudson Institute's another very conservative think tank. But Heritage kind of made this weird turn, and it's kind of steering people with them away from Ukraine toward more of an internal looking view. Yeah, it's really odd to see. So, but I was looking at him because yeah, at any rate, this particular individual that he highlighted was at Heritage, was holding up Ukraine, and then got kind of pushed out by Heritage and went over to the Hudson Institute. War Watchers, strong men listen to their enemies and treat them with dignity, like how Russia treats Ukraine. Well, I'm not sure exactly what the sarcasm is with that, with the dignity, but you'll find that authoritarians tend to like other authoritarians. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily Trump, although he does seem to have those kind of leanings. But like, look at who Russia wants to pal around with: North Korea, Iran, China. I mean, these kind of places, like, these guys get along. Democracies are the same way. They kind of get along with other democracies and they understand each other. Okay, nothing dignified about how Russia treats Ukraine. I agree. Let me go back to see. What do you think Trump meant when he said he would end the war in 24 hours? If aid stopped, Ukraine would still fight, and so would Europe. I think he would simply say something along the lines of, well, we're not supplying you with anything else, and so you need to make these concessions, these deals. This is the best you're going to get. And I think that's what he means, which means that Ukraine would have to give up the regions that are currently occupied by Russia, something along those lines. I don't think that it's going to work. And I also don't think you can conclude an agreement with someone who has proven to violate it, like Putin. So it's going to be settled by force of arms because Putin already violated previous agreements. Okay, I'm going to wrap up pretty shortly here. Let's see. Cheryl says, yes, CPAC was held in Hungary twice in a row with Viktor Orban as a keynote speaker, organized by Heritage. And there's a link between Hungary and what's the name of the institute? The Danube Institute and CPAC now, that wasn't there, wasn't there years ago. And there is, like, and if you want to pick a conservative country to go have your CPAC is their big annual meeting, the conservative meeting for Heritage. Well, it's not just Heritage, but it's a lot of conservatives. If you want to pick a conservative kind of country, Poland's right there. like you could have done that. Yeah, it's bizarre. Okay. Alex says Ukraine has to step it up. They've been falling back. They got to start pushing again. It's a hard thing. They've made very little progress on the ground in the counteroffensive, and there's a reason for that. But they've been actually really amazing in their attacks in the Black Sea and into Russia, and doing things that nobody thought was possible. Okay, just a couple more comments and we'll be done. Thanks for your efforts. I watch every day and I'll continue to do so for as long as it takes. Thanks. I appreciate that you guys are informing yourselves and listening. Oh, Cheryl up here says Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, Mike Flynn. Steve Bannon worked for Trump. Alex Jones is conspirator in chief. And I don't understand how he gets the traction that he gets. But by the way, one of the signs that somebody is useful or not useful when you're trying to filter, and this isn't the only sign, but are they talking about what's going to happen, or are they trying to dissect what happened? And what I mean by that is QAnon is saying this is going to happen here, or this guy saying that's going to happen here, or this is about to happen, or whatever. That is really dangerous. As opposed to saying, here's what happened, here's what we know, here's how it's proved. You see these articles in like legitimate sources, and here, right? Because anybody can go on YouTube and just say anything, right? So you have to be careful with that kind of thing. William G. Atheist Canada, I think, says, thank you for the super chat here. It's from a porch crawling liberal. Thank you. Well, I'm glad that you're willing to listen and hear these other perspectives, and that's really what you need to do. Is hear other perspectives and triangulate on the facts and try to make sense of what it is. And you don't have to agree with. Pavi just popped up with a super chat. Thank you very much, Pavi. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer it. But thank you for that. Um, yeah, just triangulate on the facts. You're not going to agree with everything that I say. You certainly won't agree with all my perspectives. That's okay. You don't have to agree with all my perspectives. But what have I said that can add to your framework and help you understand what's actually going on? And I go way out of my way to make sure that I'm showing you, like, here are the here's the article that I pulled this from, and here's the article that I pulled that from. And even when I'm not, and so sometimes I can't get in front of my computer, and if I'm like just on the road or something, I'll try to still do the story, but I have credibility in doing that story because I show you most of the time where that is. So hopefully that's helpful. Last couple of things. Alex Jones uses a special sort of leadership to get traction. I don't understand why people listen to him. I really, I just don't get it. And he seems to be more embraced by the conspiratorial kind of crowd than ever. Easier to trick someone than convince them that they have been tricked. Yeah, I guess so. Thank you, Gerdes, for just getting us together. Absolutely. Thankfully, my nephew likes Nikki Haley. His parents are Fox watchers. Fox News is interesting. They're changing something. Like I saw one of the Murdoch sons visiting Zelensky, and then the week after that, it was the first time I saw them saying anything kind of negative-ish about Trump in one of the just kind of debating kind of shows. Now, Laura Ingraham is very much in a Tucker kind of mold, so I can't watch her. I mean, it works my nerves when, but I mean, that's, so there's some differences between there. I think it'll be interesting to see how it's projected over time. You can't paint Fox with a complete brush either. There is a hard news segment. There are some that are like me, of the old school ilk. I just don't know. Clearly, Laura Ingraham is of that cast, but some others aren't. Okay, last little bit. Pavi, you just type your question in the green section. Took me a while to understand it, so I'm gonna hang on here a little bit to see if I can answer Pavi's question, since he was kind enough to do the super chat. One request: it would be great if you could paste the URLs to the articles you are reading in the videos. It would be, and sometimes I do if it's really important, but it's also, this is a lot of work just to get to where I am right now. I show you, and you see the titles of it. You can just Google the same titles if they're there, because I almost always show you the title and then read, but I do understand. Okay. The snake says, do you think that it's plausible that Mike Johnson's stance on Ukraine aid is influenced by advancing Trump's campaign? I mean, I'm sure he's thinking that he wants the Republican to win, and if that's Trump, he's probably fine with it because he kind of leans that direction anyway. There's no secret about his leanings and inclinations. So, I mean, in the same way that a Democrat wants Biden to win, I don't think that there's an issue there. Pavi responded, thank you, next time I try it. Okay, so that's it. I was just waiting for Pavi to respond, and thank you for your time, folks, and all the good questions, and hopefully that helped bring some understanding. I'm very optimistic about the domestic situation in the United States as far as funding for Ukraine, and I think you should. Some people were like, I was losing sleep at night. No, don't lose sleep at night. That's not going to help anyone. Just, I think it'll be okay. It's not as fast as I would like it to be, but I think it'll be okay. All right. Thank you for your time. Look for that video forthcoming about Warthog defense, where I'm going to show you what he said about him being taken off of YouTube. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.